Good morning, I am DR.Baneswar. Today I am going to make a video on development of brain. So, this is the development of brain as per the Vishram Singh clinical neuroanatomy. This diagram. So these are the diagrams followed to prepare my models. So as per IB Singh embryology, Inderbir Singh embryology, these are the diagrams. So this is the blastocyst. This is the extraembryonic xylem. Extraembryonic xylem. These are the tertiary chorionic villi. Tertiary chorionic villi. The tertiary chorionic villi. So these are the fetal blood vessels, and these are the maternal blood vessels within the lacuna. And this white part is the extraembryonic mesoderm. Then next one is the cytotrophoblast, then syncytotrophoblast. So this is about the chorionic villi. Then is the extraembryonic xylem, extraembryonic mesoderm. Then this is the trophoblast. Trophoblast will be divided into cytotrophoblast and syncytotrophoblast. And this is the blastocyst. This is the blastocyst. This is the connecting stalk. Connecting stalk. This is the amniotic cavity. Amniotic cavity, and this is the secondary walk sac. Amniotic cavity and secondary walk sac. Now we need this amniotic. This is the amniotic cavity. Amniotic cavity. This is the secondary walk sac. Secondary walk sac, and this is the trilaminar jamdix. So this is the trilaminar jamdix. This is the ectoderm. This blue is the ectoderm. This endoderm. Endoderm. Pacopharyngeal membrane. Cloacal membrane. Neural tube. Then paraxial mesoderm, intermediate mesoderm, lateral plate, lateral plate mesoderm. Within the lateral plate mesoderm, this is the cavity. This is called intraembryonic xylem. This is called intraembryonic xylem. So this intraembryonic xylem opens posterolaterally to the extraembryonic xylem. This is the cavity within the lateral plate mesoderm. So this cavity separates lateral plate mesoderm into somatopleuric and splanchnopleuric intraembryonic mesoderm, and this cavity intraembryonic xylem opens laterally to the extraembryonic xylem. This is the opening of the intraembryonic xylem to the extraembryonic xylem. As per the Vishram Singh clinical neuroanatomy, so this is the cross section. This is the cross section of the trilaminar jamdix. So ectoderm, mesoderm, and endoderm. Then there will be this part is called neural plate. This part is called neural plate. Then there will be grooving in the neural plate. It will be the neural groove. Then this neural groove will become the neural tube. Then this part is the neural crest. The medial end of this ectoderm will become the neural crest. as per the Vishram Singh clinical neuroanatomy. So this is the amniotic cavity and this is the secondary walk set. Within the amniotic cavity and secondary walk set, so this is our trilaminar jamdix. So trilaminar jamdix is this formation of the trilaminar jamdix is known as the gastrulation. Now these two areas, this cranial and caudal two areas, that is called buccopharyngeal membrane and cloacal membrane. In these two areas, the ectoderm, this ectoderm and endoderm are tightly adherent to each other. Okay, so in between this buccopharyngeal membrane and cloacal membrane, this area is called neural plate. This midline area between the buccopharyngeal membrane and cloacal membrane is called neural plate. In this neural plate, there will be proliferation. Due to proliferation, it becomes the neural groove as per the textbook. So neural group, then from this neural group there will be formation of neural tube, and this neural tube formation is called neurulation. This is the neural tube. Now this is the neural tube. The neural tube just above the notochord. This is the notochord. This is the paraxial mesoderm. The paraxial mesoderm will be converted into somites. These are the somites. Then lateral to the somites, this is the intermediate mesoderm. Intermediate mesoderm. Then lateral to the intermediate mesoderm, this part is called lateral plate mesoderm. Lateral plate mesoderm is continuous with the opposite side, just in front of the buccopharyngeal membrane. Okay, so this is the neural tube formation. This is the neural tube just below the ectoderm. So now it is the bigger model. In this bigger model, so there will be development of brain. This part is the brain part, brain and spinal cord. Okay, brain and spinal cord. So within the brain part, there will be three dilatation. There will be three formation of three vesicles. So this is called prosencephalon. Most entirely this part is called prosencephalon or forebrain. Then mesencephalon or midbrain. Then rhombencephalon or hindbrain. Okay. So this is the neural tube. So this neural tube will be divided into brain and spinal cord. So okay, within the brain and spinal cord there will be a cavity. This cavity will be the ventricle. Okay, so this neural tube, the cranial, this side is called cranial side and this side is called caudal side. Okay, so the cranial in the cranial side, the neural tube closes in the 25 days, and in the caudal side it is closed in the 28 days. So this is about the derivatives of neural tube into brain and spinal cord. Okay, so prosencephalon, mesencephalon and rhombencephalon. So this is the prosencephalon or forebrain. So in the right and left side, of the prosencephalon, there will be two more swellings. So this is the two more swellings in the forebrain or prosencephalon. So these two swellings are called telencephalon. This is the talens, the right and left telencephalon. But the original part of the prosencephalon, in the midline, that is called diencephalon. This part is called diencephalon. Okay, so within the telencephalon there is a cavity. That cavity is called first and second ventricle, or right and left lateral ventricle. Suppose this is the bigger model. So this is the bigger model. So this is the diencephalon. This part is called diencephalon, and this is the telencephalon. Okay, telencephalon. So in this within the telencephalon, this cavity is called first or right ventricle, and in the left side is a second or left lateral ventricle. Okay. Now this is called diencephalon. So within the diencephalon, this is the third ventricle. Yeah, this cavity within the diencephalon is called third ventricle. Third ventricle. Now this lateral ventricle, right lateral ventricle and left lateral ventricle is connected by interventricular foramen of Monro. This is called interventricular foramen of Monro. Okay. Then within the diencephalon, it is the third ventricle. Within the midbrain, this is called, it will be the aqueduct of Sylvius. Aqueduct of Sylvius. Then within the rhombencephalon, this part will be the fourth ventricle. Fourth ventricle. Then within the spinal cord, it is called central canal. Within the spinal cord, it will be the central canal. So this is the telencephalon. This is the diencephalon. Okay. So you see this telencephalon, externally it is covered by pia mater. This white part is called pia mater. And internally it is lined by ependyma. The ventricle is lined by ependyma. Okay. So the diencephalon will give rise to 5 things: thalamus, hypothalamus, epithalamus, metathalamus, and subthalamus. These 5 things will be the derivatives of the diencephalon. Thalamus, hypothalamus, epithalamus, subthalamus, and metathalamus. Now this is the telencephalon. So from this telencephalon, there will be the development of cerebral hemisphere. So this is the cerebral hemisphere. Cerebral hemisphere. The cerebral hemisphere, right cerebral hemisphere and left cerebral hemisphere is a frontal pole, occipital pole, and occipital poles. Then this is the temporal pole. Temporal pole. So as a whole, the cerebral hemisphere will be divided into 5 parts: frontal lobe, occipital lobe, parietal lobe, temporal lobe, and if we separate this lateral sulcus, this one is called lateral sulcus or Sylvian fissure. If we split this lateral sulcus, then there will be the 5th lobe, that is called island of Rayleigh or insula. So frontal lobe, parietal lobe, occipital lobe, temporal lobe, and if we separate the temporal and frontal lobe, I mean this fissure, Sylvian fissure, then we will see the central lobe or islands of Rayleigh. So this is the cerebral hemisphere. Okay. So this cerebral hemisphere developed from this telencephalon. Okay, telencephalon. Now the midbrain. Okay, then it is a hindbrain or rhombencephalon. So the rhombencephalon will be divided into metencephalon and myelencephalon. So this is the midbrain. This part is called midbrain. So the midbrain developed from the mesencephalon, and this is the cerebellum. This is the cerebellum, and this is the pons. So this pons and cerebellum developed from the metencephalon. Pons, this is the pons, and this is the cerebellum. Developed from the metencephalon. Then remaining part of the rhombencephalon, that is the myelencephalon. So from the myelencephalon there will be the development of medulla oblongata. This is the medulla oblongata. So as a whole, this part is called brainstem. As a whole, this part is called brainstem. This part is called midbrain. The midbrain is again divided into two sections. This is superior colliculus. This is called superior colliculus. Superior colliculus and inferior colliculus. Okay. So this is the midbrain. Midbrain developed from the mesencephalon, and this is the pons. This is the swelling part just below the midbrain, just above the medulla oblongata. This part is called pons. So the pons will be connected with the cerebellum by these cerebellar peduncles. So this is the right and left cerebellar hemisphere. Though the cerebellum is connected with the brainstem, I mean the midbrain, pons and medulla. So the superior cerebellar peduncle connects cerebellum to the midbrain. Middle cerebellar peduncle connects pons to the cerebellum. Then inferior cerebellar peduncle connects medulla to the cerebellum. So within the midbrain, this is the aqueduct of Sylvius. This cavity is called aqueduct of Sylvius. So you can see the cavity, the ventricular part of the midbrain is called aqueduct of Sylvius. Then the cavity within the metencephalon, I mean between the pons and cerebellum, this cavity is called fourth ventricle. This cavity is called fourth ventricle. Okay. So this is our telencephalon. This is the telencephalon. Okay. So telencephalon, most externally it is a pyometer. Most externally this white part is called pyometer, and internally the lining epithelial lining of this ventricle is called ependyma. So in between this pia and ependyma, this part is the neural telencephalon that developed from the neuroectoderm. So from this area there will be the development of neuroblast. First of all, it was neural plate. So these cells, ectodermal cells of this neural tube will give rise to neuroblast. Okay. From this neuroblast there will be development of neurons. So neuron means the cell body, then the axons and dendrites. Okay. Now the neurons. First of all, neuroectoderm. First of all, neuroectoderm, then neuroblast, then neurons. From these neurons, the axons will cross to the opposite side. The neurons will cross to the opposite side, which will form the corpus callosum. Okay. So before this process, so this telencephalon will grow in size. Telencephalon will grow in size. So during the development of this telencephalon, the medial part of this telencephalon will overgrow. The medial part of this telencephalon will overgrow over the diencephalon. So this is the model. This is the diencephalon. This is the diencephalon. This is the third ventricle. This is third ventricle. This is the diencephalon, and this is the lateral ventricle. This is the lateral ventricle. Okay, and this is the interventricular foramen of Monro. Interventricular foramen of Monro. Interventricular right and left interventricular foramen of Monro that connects lateral ventricle to the third ventricle. This is the third ventricle, and this is the roof of the diencephalon. Okay. Now see, So this telencephalon grows in size. The telencephalon grows in size, and it overgrows over the diencephalon. Okay. So during this growing process, so there will be a formation of pocket or fissure. This is called choroid fissure. This is called choroid fissure. Choroid fissure. So this gap is called choroid fissure. Now this area is called tela choroidea. This part is called tela choroidea. So in this tela choroidea, there will be the only two layer. Most internally, this is the pia. This is the pia, and internally this is the ependyma. Ependyma. So this is called tela choroidea, and this pocket is called choroid fissure. Choroid fissure. So if we see from the lateral ventricle, or if we see from the lateral side, this is a comma sepate, semilunar sepate, choroid, forming the choroid fissure. This is the choroid fissure, and it is bounded laterally by the tela choroidea. Okay, tela choroidea is only two layer. This is the pia. Medially this is the pia, and laterally this is the ependyma. Okay, but in the other part of this telencephalon, there will be pia. Outer covering is pia, inner lining is ependyma, and in between these two there will be the neurons. Now these neurons having the axons and dendrite. So these axons will cross to the opposite side, which will form the corpus callosum. So before forming the corpus callosum, you see, so around the telencephalon, in the periphery of this telencephalon, there will be the development of blood vessels. So these blood vessels will enter to this choroid fissure. Blood vessels. So these blood vessels entering to this choroid fissure, they will form the choroid plexus. So these blood vessels, which are developing around the periphery of the telencephalon, and which are also entering to the choroid fissure. So these blood vessels will be divided into many more capillaries. So these capillaries will be covered by tela choroidea. Tela choroidea means pia and ependyma. So these blood capillaries covered by this tela choroidea will form the choroid plexus within the lateral ventricle. Okay. So by this time this comma sepate, or semilunar sepate choroid fissure, this is the choroid fissure covered by this tela choroidea. If this shape is, first of all, comma sepate, just above the interventricular foramen of Monro. So it will be C sepate due to differential growth of the telencephalon. The telencephalon grows frontally, frontal pole, and posteriorly occipital pole, and laterally temporal pole. So in this way, this is the lateral ventricle. So lateral ventricle also grows, and this choroid fissure becomes C sepate. This choroid fissure covered by tela choroidea becomes C sepate, and is the interventricular foramen of Monro. Okay. Now these neurons of this telencephalon, having the axons, development of axons and dendrites. So these axons will grow to the opposite side. These axons will go to the opposite side. So right-sided axons will cross to the opposite side, go to the left side. Left-sided axons will come to the right side. So in this way, this is the development of corpus callosum. This is the corpus callosum. Just this is the third ventricle, and this is the roof of the third ventricle, the diencephalon. So above the diencephalon, this is the choroid fissure. This is the choroid fissure, which is roofed by the corpus callosum. It is roofed by the corpus callosum. Just the posteriorly below this corpus callosum, the posterior most part of this corpus callosum, which will be the splenium. So it will be the opening of this choroid fissure, most posteriorly. Then you see, if we trace the choroid fissure, it is a C-shape. This C-shape. It is C-shape. It is C-shape. Okay. So this is the corpus callosum, and this is the lateral ventricle. This is the tela choroidea. Tela choroidea, which is the boundary of the choroid fissure. This is the choroid fissure. Within this choroid fissure, there will be the blood vessels. That blood vessels are called choroidal branch. So this through this fissure, that is called transverse fissure. This is called transverse fissure, just below the corpus callosum, splenium of the corpus callosum. This is called transverse fissure. Through this transverse fissure, posterior choroidal artery, which is the branch of posterior cerebral artery, enters. Then is the lowermost part of the choroid fissure. So this part will be the fissure, inferior horn of the lateral ventricle. So through this lowermost part of this C-shaped choroid fissure, there will be the entry of anterior choroidal artery. Anterior choroidal artery is the branch of middle cerebral artery. So already we have discussed the corpus callosum, development of the corpus callosum. Now here you see, this is the telencephalon. The telencephalon, these axons, when they cross to the opposite side, just over the diencephalon, that will be the corpus callosum. Now this lateral part of this telencephalon, this is the lateral part of the telencephalon. So these axons in the lateral wall of the telencephalon, these axons, as per this diagram, you see, this is the lateral part of the telencephalon. So these axons will descend. These axons will descend towards the brainstem. Okay. So this part is called diencephalon. Okay. Now these axons, when they descend, they will divide this lowermost part of the telencephalon. This part is called corpus striatum. So this corpus striatum, the cell bodies or nuclei of this telencephalon, lowermost part of the telencephalon, will be divided. These axons the axons of the neurons of this lateral part of the telencephalon will descend towards the brainstem and spinal cord. So these axons, this red line axons, will divide the this area is called corpus striatum. These cell bodies or nuclei of this lowermost part of the telencephalon is called corpus striatum. It is divided into medial and lateral part. So this is the medial and lateral part. So medially, this part will be the fusor caudate nucleus. It will be the caudate nucleus, and it is lentiform nucleus. And this is the thalamus. This thalamus is the thalamus that develop from the diencephalon. So already we have discussed this diencephalon will give rise to thalamus, hypothalamus, epithalamus, subthalamus and metathalamus. So this is the thalamus. The thalamus is from the diencephalon. Okay. Now this is the descending and ascending fibers. So this red color descending fiber. This is the descending fiber. So this descending fiber, which is bounded medially by the thalamus, anteriorly by the caudate nucleus, laterally by the lentiform nucleus. So this is the adult model, adult diagram. So this V-shaped area is called internal capsule. It is the internal capsule. This is the descending and ascending fibers. Internal capsule is a descending and ascending fiber which is divided into anterior limb. This part is called anterior limb, then genu, posterior limb and retrolentiform part of the internal capsule, and this is called lentiform nucleus. This black color laterally it is called lentiform nucleus. Then this is the thalamus. This is the thalamus, the interthalamic adhesion. This part is called interthalamic adhesion. So this thalamus developed from the diencephalon. Thalamus from the diencephalon. Then this is the caudate nucleus. This is the head of the caudate, comma sepate. This is a comma sepate head of the caudate nucleus. This is the body of the caudate nucleus. Then this is the tail of the caudate nucleus. Okay. So this is the lentiform nucleus. Below this lentiform nucleus, this is the sublentiform part of the internal capsule. Sublentiform part of the internal capsule. Okay. So this is called internal capsule. It is a very, very important area. Though this internal capsule is bounded laterally by the lentiform nucleus, anteriorly by the caudate nucleus and head of the caudate nucleus, and medially by the thalamus. So this lentiform nucleus and caudate nucleus together is called basal ganglia. Basal ganglia or basal nuclei. So basal ganglia or basal nuclei is only the lentiform nucleus and caudate nucleus. So the thalamus is not the part of the basal ganglia. So the thalamus actually developed from the diencephalon. Okay. So this is the crus cerebri. This is the crus cerebri within the midbrain. This is the midbrain. This part is called crus cerebri. So we discussed this is the neural tube. From this neural tube, brain and spinal cord. So this cavity is called ventricle of the brain. So this is the adult ventricle of the brain. So this is called lateral ventricle. This is the adult lateral ventricle, anterior horn, posterior horn, inferior horn. Then is the central part, and this part is called collateral trigon. This is the lateral ventricle, and this is the third ventricle. Within the diencephalon is the third ventricle. Then this lateral ventricle will be connected with the third ventricle by interventricular foramen of Monro. This is the interventricular foramen of Monro. Then this is the fourth ventricle. The fourth ventricle will be connected with the third ventricle by this aqueduct of Sylvius. It is within the midbrain. Aqueduct of Sylvius within the midbrain. So it is the fourth ventricle. The fourth ventricle continuous downward towards the central canal of the spinal cord. Now this is the fourth ventricle. This fourth ventricle will be connected with the subarachnoid space of the posterior cranial cavity or fossa by this is the foramen of Magendie. This is the foramen of Magendie, and is the foramen of Laska. Right and left foramen of Laska. So the foramen of Laska connects fourth ventricle to the subarachnoid space of the posterior cranial cavity, and the foramen of Magendie connects fourth ventricle to the subarachnoid space of the posterior cranial cavity in the midline. So this is the adult ventricle. So this is about our development of brain. I have made these models following the I.V. Singh, Inder Singh embryology and Vishram Singh neuroanatomy. So these ventricles CSF formation, CSF circulation, CSF absorption, CSF functions will be discussed later on in the subsequent videos. And this is the model of the fibers of the brain, internal capsule, corpus callosum. The fibers of the brain will be again discussed in the later part in the subsequent videos. Okay, so please write in comment section whenever when there is anything left according to my videos, anything left, please write in comment section. So thank you for listening.